All right, Shane, I'm going to start with you. I want you to position your franchise story. So it's a very simplistic question, but I think it will start framing how we go in this discussion very well. How did you fall into franchising?
Well, kind of by accident. I was not the founder of Twisted Kitchen. It was started in 2009 by another guy, and my brother and I came in as investors in 2014 to help it grow.
Yeah.
And we had some issues, so we ended up with the whole company. And so by the time we ended up with the whole company, we were pretty deeply invested at that point. So it was either shut them. We had other business and other interests. Either shut them down and lose everything, or try to grow the business. So we decided to try to grow the business. So that's when we reached out to Jay with Goliath and with Reggie for their help, since we have no restaurant experience. And so that's where we are now.
Shane, when you're looking at this business, obviously you were going in from an investor standpoint at the start. Is it because you love the product? Did you fall in love with the food, or what was the opportunity?
A friend of a friend started the Twisted Kitchen, and he was looking for investors, and my brother and I are investors. We invest in all different kinds of businesses. And so we went and met and had lunch, and we really enjoyed it. We liked the concept, and that's what got us there. So,
well, and I would imagine, I mean, a lot of franchise buyers go through a very similar path that you probably did. Maybe a little bit more aggressive on I want to own a franchise,
right.
But you're an investor. You come in, you try the product, you're like, all right, I'm interested. How did your due diligence go at that point, or was it more so like we have an investment portfolio, we're just going to continue to add businesses into it?
That was what it is. Just another. It was going to be just another investment for us.
Okay.
But our due diligence was, we went and met for lunch and enjoyed it. We liked the concept, and I'd never seen anything like that before.
All right, Reggie. So two questions, because I want you to frame your franchise story, how you fell into franchising, and then when you're done with that, I want you to answer this, or if you want to answer it first. Man, if franchising could be that easy, if we could find more Shanes that just walk in, try the product, and it's like, I'm in, then brands grow a lot easier. But Reggie, what's your franchise story?
For Twisted Kitchen?
No, just in general. How did you fall into franchising, period?
Well, I started in the restaurant business actually when I was in college. So it was a part-time job. I was actually pretty good at it. Years later, people tell me that I'm one of the best people managers they've ever worked with. Very much like Shane, the two gentlemen that I work with at Arby's Roast Beef back in Tampa, they were present. One had been in restaurants for many, many years. The other was pretty much an investor. But they basically allowed me to be the first part-time manager in their business. At the time, they had maybe 10 restaurants. By the time I left them, we were up to 24. But that was my first introduction to being in the franchise model, because they were a franchise of Arby's. Fast forward, I had the opportunity to lead a franchising group with Focus Brands under one of the big franchisees who became the CEO of Focus Brands. I've been involved in franchising at different levels. Over the years, I've actually owned my own franchise. I've been on the corporate side, on the franchisee side. So it's funny, when I saw your Meet the Zor, we would always internally refer to the franchisor as Zor, and we refer to the franchisee as Z. But we never did it externally, because we had a franchisee when they said that Z just sounds, it doesn't sound good to me. I own my own business, and you know the skill. Franchisees feel strong about that, and I would always say that we own the brand, you own your business, and that's kind of what the relationship is. So very early, I understood what a good relationship should be between a franchisor and a franchisee. Having been on both sides, I've always been able to help develop programs that were more favorable for a good franchise relationship. Our business is no different than any other business out there. When we wrote our FDD, we made sure it was favorable for the franchisor, but it was also accommodating for franchisees to be able to come into our brand and have a path to success without guaranteeing anything to the franchisee. So over the years, that's kind of been my role, is to drive the franchise relationship from a people piece. I would always tell my regional VPs and directors, when you start managing a relationship from the FDD, the relationship is dead. So I brought those same principles to what we're doing with Twisted to make sure that we have that relationship that really deals with people first, in the business second, but always realizing that the business has to be in place, and we have to, through our relationships, make sure that everybody understands what the legal relationship is without having to shake the paper in front of a franchisee. So we're using those principles.
So, I mean, your backdrop, there's two things that I want to unpack from what you just said. One is big brands. You hear Focus, you hear Arby's. You've been associated with big brands, and secondly is you've walked a day in the life of a franchisee. When you're looking at something like a Twisted Kitchen, are you saying, how can we grow this thing so that a Focus Brands knocks on our door and says we want this in our portfolio? Is that the governor that you have? And secondly, obviously you just said, like, if a business dies when you manage through an FDD, are you holding on to your franchisee lens in the way that you're positioning this business?
So to the first question, yes, we certainly look at an exit strategy that says if we get up to 50, 100 units, then we definitely would entertain spinning this off to someone else. Everything's for sale, as they say. Focus has gotten to a point where they're not going to look at you unless you're probably 100 units, but there are some other franchisors that will start to take a look at us when we're at that 30 to 50 unit. So what we're mindful of is building an infrastructure that plugs and play with how they do business, number one. And then number two, I've taken from my experiences of bad situations with franchisees. It's no fun if you're sitting at the table getting ready to apply liquidated damages to a franchisee because they are 6 months behind in paying their royalties. But you know that those liquidated damages are probably going to affect them personally and affect their household. But you still have that contract. So I've been successful working with my franchise accounting teams and working with legal to come up with creative ways to have as much of a win-win separation as possible, as opposed to just coming in and not considering the relationship. Because keep in mind, we being a franchisor, we do a lot of coding with the franchisee to bring them on board. We don't necessarily make promises, but we certainly allude to what success could look like for them. And then on the back end, either through them not being ready to be a franchise or the support they receive, the relationship goes sour. So I make sure that I understand the FDD, and I've been fortunate to be a part of writing many FDDs. So while keeping the franchisor favorable in the FDD, I make sure there are many nuggets in there that allows the franchisee the opportunity to kind of create their own growth. So I say all that to say that for me, one of the successes of franchising is you get into the relationship with everybody's eyes open. So you don't quickly have someone, mainly the franchisee, say, I didn't realize this is what I was getting into.
So Reggie, you get introduced to Twisted Kitchen. when you're doing the evaluation on it, what did you like about this opportunity that made you say there's viability in this business?
Yeah, so typically in the restaurant business, the first box you need to check is, oh, I like the food. And if you've got good food, then you've got at least a foundation to sell on. And most chefs would tell you it's about the food. And then the second thing was when I looked at the basically the structure of the franchise system, everything on the menu is pretty easy to get through your suppliers. There's nothing on the menu that's really high cost. Very simple to be able to manage. Footprint 1,500 square feet. You could do it in a strip center. You don't necessarily have to have a drive-through. I think you probably could introduce a drive-through at some point, but that's not primary, which means that cost of entry for this brand would be reasonable. So someone that wants to leave corporate America and move into franchising, this is pretty easy to operate. The labor requirements are pretty simple. We can run our business between 2 to 4 people. When we get over 4 people, we probably have too much labor in the business. We can go through a pretty busy lunch rush and manage the business with 4 people and still deliver on all the service expectations that we have for our brand. I also like the fact that it was different. There's no fryers in the building, so it's not a freeze to fry concept. If you want to eat healthy, you can easily come in and order a healthy meal. You can have variety, but also in this generation, particularly with millennials and somewhat Gen Zs, it's the me society. So they could come in and customize the meal based on what they like and what they don't like. We've also made sure we've tried to address different categories. So we address plant-based items that we can offer on the meal. We're constantly working with other brands. So I said the tentacles are there to create something that could be franchised. And also, when I looked at it, I said to myself, if I were 15 years younger, I would invest in this. I think this is something that works. And as Jay has said many times, it's the brand for non-traditional locations. So, and by the way, we are in a contract with a major airport concessionaire to move into Hartsville, hopefully first quarter next year. But I say all that to say, when you think about what you can franchise, this is not one of those, oh, you've got to have $1 million to get the doors open. You could basically get into a Twisted Kitchen for just over $250,000. Now, you're not going to drive $4 million in revenue, but you could easily have 2 to 2.5 to 1 revenue to debt ratio in this model. So those were some of the things that Jay and I looked at when we went to Shane and Trent and said, hey, this is something that you can franchise. People really do like it. And again, using all the metrics of Yelp and Google and other ways that we listen to our guests, our guests love the food. Food is critical. Having a service model that could be delivered upon is critical. So a lot of the things that make or break a restaurant or a franchise system, I felt that we could deliver on.
Shane, when you hear all this, do you have joy? Are you excited about it? Are you an investor? Are you an unemotional investor?
No, I am definitely excited about it. Very excited about it. We kind of hit a crossroads when originally we started as investors, and when we ended up with the whole thing kind of by default. I didn't have time to run the day-to-day. I had other business interests, and so that's when I went to Jay to see if we had a viable business there, and I was excited about it. And once talking to Jay and Reggie, and they just get me more excited about the future and how we can grow it.
I mean, there's something to say to that, Shane. I mean, for you as an investor, and I'm sure it's not your first rodeo if I'm reading in between the lines, you invested in something that you had different expectations and outcomes for when you initially got involved. For whatever
Yes.
reason, it went in another direction, and so now you're at this inflection point where you're like, do I pour more cash into this, or do I, count my losses and move on? And so you had to go through an emotional evaluation to say, I still see legs. And then again, back to Reggie's point, for a restaurant brand that's about $250,000, you're on the lower end of the cost to get into restaurants. And so where he's looking at from an operation standpoint and what you're looking at from an investor standpoint seem to be synergetic. And the fact that you can come back emotionally and say, no, I can let the baggage go. I see the beauty of the product is a valuable piece back to an investor, I think.
And just to add to my excitement about it is, I am winding down some of my day-to-day things that I do now, and I've talked to Reggie and Jay about this, and the closest restaurant's about 100 miles from my office. But I want to open up a restaurant here in my town so that I can be involved daily in the running of actual restaurant. So that's what my retirement is going to be.
Shane, when you think about
I'll share this. My excitement is when Shane and Trent bring their mom and dad into the business, bring their other family members in, and a lot of times they come in, they try it and say, okay, we've experienced it, but they come in often, and they also have opinions about the business. So everybody goes to restaurants, everybody likes food, so it's a business where you don't have to be an expert, but you know what you like and what you don't like, and for the extended family, particularly Shane's mom and dad, who were in business before they were, that come in and they see something that they like. And again, transparency, we have bumps on the road. We still have things we have to figure out. That's one of the reasons we came to you guys. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, but there's a lot of details that you and your team will look at. And I'm hoping that you tell us that this is where you see some gaps in our business.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, where I sit, if I'm trying to extract, and part of the point of this conversation is that an investor that's looking at this from the outside might listen to our discussion and say, okay, I'm trying to read in between the lines. And what I see from in between the lines, one, Shane's story of, no matter how you look at it, there was this point in the story of conflict where there had to be a decision. And now what I heard at the end of that is Shane saying, I would like to open one that's in my backyard that I operate. For someone that's a savvy investor that has financial wherewithal to say, I still see it, check mark. Reggie, for you to look at this and say, look, I've been at the biggest brands in the world, and I've helped operate small ones. I've occupied the seat of a franchisee, and I know what it's like to be a franchisor. I see it. So now from a baseline, if we were to strip away the business, we know that there's something there. And then obviously, and we've talked about this before, the positioning ends up being so critical that what we're selling in this picture are empty seats. And I know for sure there's customers that come in here, because you could see it in the reviews, where their relationship with Twisted Kitchen impacts their lives. And so now we start looking at, like, we zoom out and say, what's the story? Well, Shane and Reggie, we got to get your story front and center, because you guys are the validation behind this business opportunity with both of your lives. And then secondly, we got to paint the picture of why you want to get into it. And third, just purely the fact that you're a lower end investment in the restaurant business will allow someone more like a general manager to get involved with it. And I think all of those things are going to start coupling together to frame the story of what is Twisted Kitchen. Reggie, one last clarifying question, just in case anybody's watching this and is intrigued by the business opportunity. Shane's story is somewhat semi-absentee operator in the model. The nearest restaurant is 100 units away, and he owns the business. Can you be semi-absentee in your mind in a restaurant like this, or is this owner-operator driven?
So this is solely owner-operator driven. If the ideal franchisee is let's say a corporate person leaving the corporate world, wanting to start their own franchise model. However, we do have another model that says if you are an existing multi-unit franchisee, you may be 100 miles away, but you have infrastructure. So our team certainly could support that franchisee because, basically he's a mini franchisor. I've worked with many guys that have 50, 100, 200 units, and they have structures very similar to, the corporate environment. So that candidate certainly could operate this concept 200 miles away. But if that was not the case, we would limit our ability to support a franchisee because we want to touch and feel them. Now, I will tell you this, that Shane's probably in Atlanta 2 to 3 times a month visiting the restaurant. So he's not as absentee as the typical absentee investor. So yeah, he's in the business many times. I'm talking with his staff, and they've been watching cameras. So he's attached. He's watching what's going on. He's not a restaurateur or seasoned operator, but he's learned a lot over the years.
Well, maybe that's part of the magic too, is that you don't have to fit the typical bill of a restaurant franchisee. And as we continue to work on this message, the word twisted also can mean we're willing to be bendable and teach you how to be a great restaurant franchise operator. And I think that's going to be a great play here. So
yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing where this story goes. Thanks for sharing your guys' story. Obviously, this is the positioning so that someone from the outside can listen to us and watch this. I have the website up on the screen. For Shane and Reggie, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.